Have you ever paused to consider the quiet wisdom that comes from those who have lived long, full lives? People who have walked through countless seasons, embraced both joy and hardship, and emerged with an understanding of humanity that can't be found in any book? In today's video, we are invited into the world of an 82-year-old woman whose insights shine with depth and compassion. She speaks not only about the visible beauty of the human body, but also about the profound diversity and uniqueness that each of us carries. Her perspective challenges the way we often look at ourselves and one another, opening the door to greater respect, kindness, and empathy. What you'll hear might change not just how you perceive others, but how you come to see your own life, your own body, and your own worth. Before we dive fully into this journey, let me pause for just a moment. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I encourage you to take a second to click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It means a lot to have you with us, and your support helps spread these valuable lessons to more people who may need them. If what you hear today resonates with you, a thumbs up will go a long way in amplifying the message. And since I value your voice and your perspective, I'd love it if you'd take a moment to leave a comment below. If the stories we share spark something meaningful within you, drop the number 1 in the comments. If they don't quite land for you, share a 0 instead. Both responses help me understand what you're looking for, so I can keep creating videos that truly serve you. Now, with that said, let us step into the story. It was a warm and radiant afternoon in a village, cradled between rolling hills and fields, bursting with wildflowers. The air was rich with fragrance, and the golden sunlight spilled across rooftops, painting everything with a gentle glow. On that day, people of all ages, children with wide eyes and boundless energy, adults carrying the weight of their daily labors, gathered in a clearing where an elderly woman named Mara sat waiting. To the villagers, Mara was not only a beloved elder but also a guiding light, a woman whose words were like a lantern in times of uncertainty. When she spoke, people listened, for her stories were more than simple entertainment. They were vessels of wisdom, filled with meaning and the power to shape hearts. Mara's voice carried a musical softness, a soothing tone that wrapped around her listeners like a comforting blanket. With a gentle smile, she began. Today, my dear ones, I want to share something often spoken about in whispers, but rarely explored in its entirety. It is about the human body, its exquisite beauty, its endless diversity, and the truth that, although it is the most visible part of who we are, it remains only a fraction of our whole being. Her words floated into the afternoon air, and she lifted her gaze toward the horizon as if to draw inspiration from the vastness of the sky. Too often, she continued, people believe they can know someone simply by glancing at their appearance. They assume the story is written on the surface, but appearance is never the whole tale. The villagers leaned closer, curiosity alive in their eyes. Mara allowed a moment of silence before introducing a story that lingered in her heart. There was once a young woman named Aaliyah, Mara said softly. Her soul was as warm as the sun on a winter's morning, and her smile could chase away the heaviest of clouds. She was cherished in this village for her kindness, yet despite her generous spirit, she became the subject of whispers. Why? Because some judged her body as different. They looked at her, and instead of seeing the fullness of her heart, they saw only what stood out to their eyes. And from that shallow view, they made assumptions. Assumptions about her worth, her choices, her life. Mara's voice lowered, touched by sorrow. One day, Aaliyah came to me. She was carrying a burden no one should bear, the pain of cruel rumors. People had taken one visible part of her body and woven stories that cut deep into her soul. She felt small, unseen, defined by a fragment of herself rather than her whole being. The villagers grew quiet. Even the children seemed to sense the weight of the tale. Mara looked at them each in turn, her eyes steady yet full of compassion. "I took Aaliyah's hands in mine," Mara said, and told her, "My dear, people often judge out of ignorance. They speak from fear, from insecurity, from misunderstanding. But what they see is only a shadow, not the full light of who you are. Your body may be the part that others notice first, but it cannot measure your kindness, your courage, your dreams, or your dignity. Remember this: you are far greater than the assumptions of others." Mara rose slightly as she spoke these words, as though standing to press their truth gently but firmly into every heart present. "The truth, my beloved friends," she continued, "is that no single feature of our bodies, no single detail of our outer selves can define the vastness of our spirit. Each of us is like a tapestry, woven of countless threads, colors, and patterns, too intricate to be captured by a glance. That is why when you meet someone, you must look deeper. You must listen. You must seek their story. You must honor the complexity that lies beyond what is seen. For to judge a book by its cover is to miss the beauty of the story within." Her words lingered like a soft breeze, stirring something unspoken in the hearts of her listeners. Some nodded slowly, their faces touched with reflection. Others sat in thoughtful silence, as if realizing for the first time how much they had overlooked in people they had once misjudged. "Remember Aaliyah's story," Mara said gently. "Remember that each person is more than the surface. When you meet another soul, remind yourself, here stands a universe of dreams, of struggles, of triumphs and losses, none of which can be seen at a glance." She smiled, and the warmth of it seemed to spread through the group like firelight. The day drifted toward evening, and the sky began to soften into shades of amber. As the glow of the sun slowly gave way to twilight, the villagers found themselves not just listening, but feeling Mara's wisdom settle into their hearts. It was not only Aaliyah's pain they carried now, but also her resilience, her refusal to be reduced to appearances. One of the younger women in the circle, Lena, raised her hand. Her voice, hesitant yet filled with curiosity, broke the quiet. "Mara," she asked, "how can we truly begin to see people that way? It seems so easy to make judgments about others based on what we see first." Mara's eyes softened, and she beckoned Lena closer, as though inviting her into a shared confidence. "That is a wise question, child," she replied. "The journey begins with curiosity. Instead of letting your first impression turn into judgment, you must choose to be curious. Ask people about their stories. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Share meals, moments, laughter. When you do this, you discover the richness of another human being far beyond the surface." The villagers leaned in again, eager for what came next. Mara's voice carried steady warmth as she began another story. "Once a traveler came to our village," she said. "He wore clothes unfamiliar to us and spoke with an accent none had heard before. His ways seemed strange. Some whispered about him, others kept their distance, fearing what was unfamiliar. But Aaliyah, remembering her own experience, approached him with openness. She offered him food, she asked about his journey, and she welcomed him with kindness." The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night sky as Mara continued. In their conversation, she learned he had crossed deserts and rivers, survived storms, and witnessed wonders beyond imagination. He spoke of places we had never seen, and he listened with interest as Aaliyah told him about our home, our traditions, and our values. What began as suspicion melted into understanding, and through that exchange, a friendship blossomed, one rooted not in appearances, but in respect and shared humanity. The villagers sat quietly, each absorbing the lesson. The story was simple, yet it carried a truth that felt timeless. Curiosity, Mara had shown, was not merely asking questions. It was a bridge, a doorway to connection. She let the silence sit for a moment before she spoke again. Do you see? By choosing to look beyond the surface, Aaliyah and the traveler found kinship where there could have been fear. Each person is a world waiting to be discovered, but you can only step into that world if you are willing to approach it with openness. The villagers' faces reflected deep thought. They were beginning to see that the challenge of not judging others wasn't only about restraint, it was about courage. The courage to be curious, to listen, to set aside assumptions. As the evening settled in, the sky turned into a canvas dotted with stars, and the fire's glow painted the circle in hues of orange and gold. In that quiet space, something shifted in the hearts of all who had gathered. Mara's stories weren't just tales. They were mirrors, showing each person what was possible when they chose to live with compassion and understanding. And though the night was far from over, it was already clear that these lessons would take root, guiding how the villagers looked at one another, how they treated strangers, and how they thought about themselves. As the evening deepened and the stars gathered more thickly across the velvet sky, the village became cloaked in a serenity that only comes when hearts are open and minds are at peace. The fire continued its gentle crackle, each spark drifting upward as though carrying fragments of Mara's words into the heavens themselves. The villagers sat close, their faces illuminated by the glow, not merely from the flames before them, but from the wisdom they had absorbed. It was not often that lessons took root so quickly, but there was something in the way Mara spoke, in her patience, her warmth, her refusal to rush, that allowed every word to settle deeply, as though each phrase had been waiting for just the right moment to be heard. The people knew they had received more than stories. They had been entrusted with a way of seeing the world that had the power to transform how they lived every day of their lives. Mara's gaze moved across the circle, pausing on each person as though acknowledging their unique presence in that moment. "My dear friends," she said softly, her voice carrying like a gentle breeze, "the lesson is not in the stories alone. It is in what you choose to do with them. Wisdom is not something that can be kept in the mind alone. It must be carried into action, into the smallest of gestures, into the quiet choices you make when no one is watching. Every time you choose curiosity over judgment, kindness over suspicion, or compassion over indifference, you strengthen the bonds that weave us all together. This is how communities flourish, not through perfection, but through the steady practice of seeing each person as whole, valuable, and worthy of understanding." The villagers nodded, some slowly and thoughtfully, others with the quiet enthusiasm of those who had longed to hear such words. Lena, who had spoken earlier, looked especially moved, her eyes reflecting the firelight with newfound determination. She whispered almost to herself, "It begins with me. It begins with how I choose to see." Mara heard her, and with a smile that seemed to carry both pride and encouragement, she responded, "Yes, child. Change always begins within. You cannot control how others see the world, but you can decide how you will see it. And when you do, your example becomes a lantern for others. Do not underestimate the ripple one open heart can create." The night pressed on, and in that space of shared silence, the villagers began to reflect on moments from their own lives, times when they had judged too quickly, spoken too harshly, or failed to look beneath the surface of another. The stories Mara told were not only about Aaliyah or the traveler. They were mirrors, reflecting the villagers' own struggles and choices. Some thought of neighbors they had avoided because of differences they did not understand. Others remembered family members with whom they had quarreled, their vision clouded by pride. Slowly, as these memories rose, so too did the realization that they had opportunities every day to practice the wisdom Mara offered. And with that realization came a quiet resolve to do better, to begin again with hearts open wider than before. The campfire burned lower, but no one seemed eager to leave. Mara, sensing the unspoken hunger in the air, continued with a final thought that would bind the evening together like a thread tying the ends of a tapestry. Each of you, she said, is like a story still being written. Your body, your voice, your choices, they are the cover and the chapters others may glimpse. But beneath the words lies the meaning, and it is that meaning which matters most. When you look at another human being, remember that their story, too, is still unfolding, and you have the chance to be a part of it, either by adding kindness to their pages or by weighing them down with judgment. Choose wisely, my dear ones, for just as others are shaped by the way we treat them, so too are we shaped by the way we choose to see them. There was a long silence after she spoke, a silence that carried no discomfort, only the weight of reflection. It was the kind of pause that allowed meaning to sink beyond the mind and into the soul. Finally, one of the older men in the circle cleared his throat and said with quiet reverence, "Mara, your words are not just lessons for tonight. They are seeds for tomorrow." And with that, the circle seemed to breathe as one, as if acknowledging that the wisdom shared under the stars would not remain in the clearing alone, but would travel with each person into their homes, their fields, their relationships, and even their future generations. The fire dwindled into glowing embers, casting a softer light now, as though reminding everyone that even as flames fade, warmth can linger long after. Mara looked once more at her friends, neighbors and children, her heart full. "Carry these truths with you," she said. "Let them guide you when it is hardest, when it would be easiest to judge or dismiss another. For it is in those moments that compassion matters most. When you choose to see beyond what is visible, you honor not only the other person, but also the deepest part of yourself." And with that, the gathering slowly came to an end. The villagers rose quietly, their steps light but their hearts heavy with meaning. They returned to their homes beneath the starlit sky, carrying with them the warmth of the fire, the sound of Mara's voice, and the quiet conviction that life could be lived differently if only they chose to see differently. The village, once simply a collection of people bound by proximity, now felt like something more, a community linked by a shared promise to approach one another with greater curiosity, respect, and love. And as you, dear listener, reflect on these stories, I invite you to ask yourself, how often have you judged someone without truly knowing them? How many times have you allowed appearances to become the whole story, when in truth they were only the cover of a much deeper book? Let Mara's wisdom be a reminder that every person you meet carries a story worth hearing, and you have the chance to see beyond the surface if you choose to pause, listen, and open your heart. So as we close this video, I'd love to hear from you. What part of Mara's lessons resonated with you most? What shift will you carry into your own life? Share your reflections in the comments below, and let's continue this journey together. If these stories have touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people may discover the beauty of looking beyond appearances. Until we meet again, stay curious, stay compassionate, and never stop seeking the deeper story in every soul you encounter.